This video is called Don't Look Away or You Might Be Next. I'm sure some idiot is going to try to twist that out and pretend that it's a threat. It's not. It's reality. It is a statement of fact. When somebody is butchering your next door neighbor, you know it's going on. You can see the person doing it, but you decide to look away. You decide to say nothing and do nothing and play ignorant and stupid. Oh, that is so horrible. That is so horrible. I can't believe anyone would do that. I wonder who did it. You know exactly who did it. But you looked away. Now, that killer, well, they got away with that crime. And you, being a witness, well, you better not, or you better hope that they don't recognize that you're a witness, or, well, you're next. They'll come to your house and do the same thing that they did to that other person. And they'll get away with it because you didn't say nothing. Or rather, they're more likely to get away with it because you didn't say nothing. So then you got two dead bodies, yours and the other person that you allowed to be completely slaughtered. And now we've got a killer who's got two bodies under his belt, maybe more, and he's still free to do it again and again and again. Looking away is always a bad idea. Now, there's a politician by the last name of Harris. And there was a point brought up that I think is a very good point. Now, I don't know anything about the woman or anything about her politics. Matter of fact, I don't know much more about her other than the fact that she's a female and she's part black. I say part black because, well, I know a lot of black folks. Most of them are mixed. Most. Not all of them, but most. We're all mixed. Even if you get an African from the darkest reaches of the Congo, they're still going to have some blood that's not native. I should say genetics that are not native. There's going to be Mediterranean genetics. There's definitely going to be some genetics from Iraq and Iran, areas like that. Persian Empire. But the thing is, the point that's being brought up is that Miss Harris is a terrible politician. She is shitty at her job. And you can't say anything about her being shitty at her job because if you do, you are called a racist. We've been encountering this for about 30 to 35 years, maybe longer. Because, see, as far back as I can remember, well, anytime that a black person did something wrong to me, I had to just take it. I couldn't tell on them, especially in institutions, because then you get beat up by everybody. But when you get beat up by a racist black guy because he's pissed off at a bunch of white people, he's not pissed off at you. He's pissed off at white people. So, yes, he is in a roundabout way pissed off at you, and he's certainly taking it out on you. But you learn that you just have to take it. You can't go to the staff members. That black kid or a group of black kids that just beat you up because you're a white person, well, all they got to say is, he called me the N word, and magically it's okay. You didn't call him the N word. You didn't even try calling him the N word. You didn't even think about calling him the N word. I've had lots of black kids in institutions and lockup facilities and foster homes and even in regular mainstream school. get up in my face and say, call me the N-word, call me the N-word. But they're not saying N-word. They're using the actual word. I dare you to call me that. I dare you. I dare you. Go ahead. I know you want to. I know you want to. No, motherfucker. What I want to do is bind your hands behind your back, bind your feet at the ankles so that you can't move, so that you can't get up in my face anymore, so you can't try to intimidate me anymore, so that you can't assault me anymore. I'm not interested in hurting you. I'm not interested in killing you. I'm interested in stopping you. Now, this doesn't just go for black people. This goes for everybody. This violence has got to stop. Now, if somebody is doing a horrible job, it doesn't matter what color their skin is. And the conversation about Miss Harris is mostly about how people are being blind to the actual situation because of the color of her skin. People are being supportive of her only because of the color of her skin, because she's obviously doing a terrible job. Now, I'm guilty of this myself, not with Miss Harris, but with Colin Powell. No, that's not true either. With Colin Powell, see, when he was going to run for president, he was the first president, or the first black person I would have voted for. I mean, there's other black people who have said that they're going to run for president. I didn't like their politics, I didn't like their beliefs, and I didn't like how they were abusing religion. And don't get me wrong, I see plenty of white people doing exactly the same thing, and I'm just as upset about that and just as against those people, like Donald Trump pretending to be Christian so he could win the election. He's not the only one. Most of these politicians, being as we are in a Christian majority nation, if they want the votes, they got to pretend that they're Christian. But then after they win, what do? What did Trump do? That's right. Now, if the Colin Powell situation is not one of those situations, is there a situation where I was like that? Like people are complaining that folks are being towards Miss Harris, or they're pretending that she can't do no wrong because of her skin color. And in reality, they're ignoring all of the screw ups that she's doing because of her skin color. Yeah, absolutely, I have. Obama, I didn't know nothing about his politics. I was just sick and tired of listening to people complain about how much white people are fucking up this country. Well, if hiring a black man for the presidency means that we might have a better chance as poor people, because this black person might know something about poverty and oppression. But then again, once Barack Obama was president, I realized he was whiter than I am. I don't mean the color of his skin, I mean the color of his politics. I mean the color of his reality. With the Natalie Bollinger situation, I've had black people quite a bit in my life tell me that I'm black. Like they hear my life story and look at what I've gone through and they go, "Man, you're basically a black guy." Well, you can say that. It doesn't make it correct, and it doesn't make it right, and it doesn't make it proper. I'm not black. Homeless people are abused at a much greater rate than black folks are. However, something that I've said many times before, I was able to get a vehicle. Police target us for having backpacks, for having dirty clothes, for not being able to have everything pretty all the damn time like Americans want to see. Americans want to see Prada. They want to see Louis Vuitton. They want to see Skechers. They don't want to see New Balance. They don't want to see Payless. They don't want to see Kmart, and they sure as hell don't want to see Value Village. They don't want to see Savers. They don't want to see Salvation Army. They want to see pretty. Pretty is what matters to Americans. What do rich people spend their money on? Pretty, pretty things, and making more money. But it takes money to make money, doesn't it? Now we got a lot of these situations, like right now, with that young man who decided to go kill people at a BLM gathering. Well, they want to call out the National Guard in case black people riot. You know why World War II or World War I ended? Because the German people rioted. The German people were tired of starving. So the Kaiser Wilhelm II, tried to quell the rebellion with the military. Well, the military said, fuck you. Our boys are not that smart. They're too pampered. They're too spoiled. They grow up in mommy and daddy's house with mommy and daddy's rules, and they think that's the same as the real world. They join the military at 18. They still don't know shit about the real world. They go through boot camp. They go to a foreign country and shoot foreign children. And then they come back to America. And then they're not under their parents' roof. They're not in a foreign country, and they get to realize what America is really about. That ain't nothing worth being proud of. This is a shame-worthy country. Now, there's another man who was murdered. He was a white guy, and his murderer got away with it. Drove his vehicle into a crowd of people at a BLM gathering and shot this man to death. I have been in contact with his mother. Now let's look his name up here. Garrett Foster. Army Sergeant indicted for murder of Austin protester Garrett Foster in 2020. They're wanting to drop the charges. Now, Foster didn't point his gun at anybody, but they're trying to allow his killers to go free. Despite the fact that this man fought for BLM, fought for Black lives, this man, he's a white guy. He married a black woman. When they first got together, she was healthy. At 19 years of age, she ended up with an illness and ended up having her legs and her arms amputated. Garrett Foster stuck with her. But he's not black, so BLM is not fighting for his rights the way that they would for their own. Now there's all these things saying that this boy who shot people at the BLM march, well, they're saying they've got all these comparisons all over Facebook about, hey, this is how a white man is treated, and this is how a black man is treated. And then they show a black person who's gone through the worst case scenario. And then they show this boy who killed people, and they're wanting to give him some leniency. Meanwhile, nobody's bringing up Garrett Foster. If you do a comparison of how Garrett Foster and his situation is Compared to many of these situations with BLM, you realize that Garrett Foster was in a much more fucked up situation. He went through a lot more. He's not cared for or about by the media. He's not cared for or about by BLM. He's not black enough for his life to matter. He's not black enough for what he did to make any difference to the black community or to the BLM community in specific. Now, this man who killed Garrett Foster is an Army sergeant. Now, there was another man who had a gun and he disarmed a couple of protesters. I believe it was in Oregon. And this man has had his name praised all over the news. Also a white guy. He's had his name praised all over the news and been on several talk shows because he disarmed some people who had guns. This man was literally pointing guns at these people. Not okay. How are you going to have a gun and point that gun at another human being and tell that person that they can't have a gun and they're not pointing it at anyone? Now, sure, those protesters and rioters stole those guns from the police department out of a police crew. But at the same time, that's what we have our second for, is so that you can protect yourself from tyranny. And we do live in a tyrannical country. Most of the Americans I know live below the poverty line, well below the poverty line. Some of the statistics that have popped up recently show that over 50% of Americans live below the poverty line. Over 50% is a pretty significant number. A lot of people want to blame it on inflation. Inflation is an artificial concept, just like the idea of land management. This is the idea that, say, you've got 6,000 acres. Let's pretend that all of the land on Earth is 6,000 acres and there's 100 people that got to live on it. Now, let's say that one of those people owns all but one of those acres. All the rest of the people are squabbling for their tiny spot on that 1 acre. How is that okay? We're all still on this planet, but now we've got all those people on that 1 acre who are dependent upon that one person to have some humanity. Well, if they had any sort of humanity at all, they wouldn't be hoarding that many acres. They wouldn't have any obvious need for it. Now, there's a woman who's gone through many of the things that I've gone through. She got beaten in the head worse than I did. She's got some speech problems as a result of it. Matter of fact, she's messaging me right now. Now, I keep seeing all of these comparisons on Facebook from BLM, and they completely ignore all of the literal millions of white people going through worst case scenarios, the thousands of homeless people that have been killed, thousands and thousands killed by law enforcement. They're ignored. BLM has even ignored black homeless people. Apparently, if you're homeless, you're no longer black because BLM doesn't give a shit. If you're a homeless black person, your life no longer matters to BLM. Well, guess what? If you're black and homeless, your life still matters to me. If you're white and homeless, your life still matters to me. I'm going to end this video. We got to find a way to work together. If we don't look out for our neighbors, we're screwed. And we haven't been looking out for our neighbors. And then we want to complain when it happens to us. You saw it happening and you did nothing. You have no right to complain. You have no place to complain. When the very same people that you turned a blind eye to come after you. When the Nazis went for the Jews, you were fine with it. When they started going after Catholics, you got pissed off. When they started going after Protestants, you got pissed off. You were fine with it as long as it was just the Jews. Here in America, we have a Christian majority. Many of those Christians are what are called anti-Zionists. An anti-Zionist is, well, they're against the religion in specific of Judaism. They blame Jews for the death of Jesus. Like all Jews must be terrible people because Jesus was crucified. And that simply is not the case. The idea of blaming an entire group of people for what one person did is horrible. Now they say the sins of the father will be revisited upon the son. Well, let's say that your father raped you. If your father raped you, you are the victim of rape. By that crap in the Bible, because you are a victim of rape, it don't make any difference. What matters is that your dad committed a sin and you will be punished for it. Your dad was a rapist. So according to the Bible, God is going to punish you because your father was a rapist. I'm sorry, bud, but here's the thing. If my dad was a rapist, I'd turn his ass in. My dad is not a rapist. Thank goodness. But if my dad was a rapist, he deserves that time, not me. When it comes to Natalie's family, they did horrible things and they got away with it. Ted Bollinger raped Natalie and Alicia. Tim Beeson raped Natalie. These men got away with it. And I've taken the punishment for it. For 5 years now. Over 5 years. The abuse that I started enduring over Natalie Bollinger and her drug-induced bullshit started in October of 2016. I'm not going to pretend that every black person who does something wrong is innocent. I'm not going to pretend that every time that a black person gets pulled over that it's because of the color of their skin. I'm not going to pretend that every time that a black person is put in jail it's because of the color of their skin. I'm not going to pretend that every single thing bad that has ever happened in a black person's life is my fault. I'm not going to do that. If I owned you, you would have every right and every reason to bitch at me about slavery. But I've never owned a slave and you've never been a slave. When people say, I need to let it go, I need to let it go, these are things that I am still having to go through. How many black people still have to go through slavery? The 13th Amendment made it illegal to own slaves unless they were convicted of a crime. So the South made it illegal to be homeless. They made every aspect of homelessness against the law. And they reintegrated all of those slaves that were forced into homelessness. These slaves that were prized commodities. You didn't want to beat your slave to death. Slaves were expensive. They were expensive to buy. They were expensive to replace. The South actually had the only universal healthcare system that the United States has ever had. They had that before the Civil War and during the Civil War, and it disappeared right after the Civil War. Right after the Civil War, you could literally beat these slaves to death in a chain gang and deny them medical attention. I'm pretty up to date as far as the history of the United States goes. There's a lot of stuff that I don't know. A lot. I mean, how many of y'all could name all the tribes that were here when Columbus landed? Or when the Mayflower landed? The Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. How many of you can tell me which tribes were around the Great Lakes in the War of 1812? I can't. I can't tell you. I mean, I know that the Iroquois Confederacy was in that area, but they weren't the only ones. Where were the Algonquin? Where were they placed? During when, what years, what eras? What were their beliefs? I mean, we don't have a long enough life to learn everything that there is to know. There are discoveries being made today that people spent literally decades on. That means they spent at least 10 years studying these things and learning about these things so that they could make a breakthrough. And you get to learn about the breakthrough, but you don't learn about all of the years of trial and error that went into that discovery. I don't know how it is to be black, but at the same time, I'm not going to give you a get out of jail free card just because of your skin color. If you did wrong, you did wrong. If you killed somebody, you killed somebody. If you raped somebody, you raped somebody. If you spread slander that resulted in death, you did that. You did it. Not everybody of your skin color, not everybody of your gender, but you in specific, and you in specific deserve the consequences. Stop looking the other way.